Oh, what a day we have today at the Zoe Rosenberg chicken rescue trial going on in Northern California. So much breaking news. But first, let's just give you the basic 411 on what happened. Essentially, this happened back in June of 2023. Direct Action Everywhere animal cruelty investigator Zoe Rosenberg, 23 years old, also a UC Berkeley student, went into this Purdue-owned slaughterhouse and rescued 4 chickens. You are seeing her in the process of doing that rescue. She did not hide her actions. They actually put out this video. So usually, in most cases, the quote-unquote defendant tries to hide the evidence. In this case, it's an upside-down world. Direct Action Everywhere, an animal rights organization that says there's massive cruelty in industrialized animal agriculture, puts out these videos to try to show people what's happening behind closed doors. And you can see it's very hard to even get the container carrying just some of the chickens. This truck is packed with chickens, top to finish. And it's from this container that Zoe Rosenberg takes 4 of the chickens, and those chickens were rescued and taken to a veterinarian. Huge battles over how much veterinary records can be shown, how much records from inside the facility that another investigator took can be shown. But essentially, this is what prosecutors want to lock Zoe up for almost half a decade. And they arrested her not right after she did this, months later, when another founder, a co-founder of Direct Action Everywhere, was convicted and sentenced. And there's Zoe right after watching that sentencing and seeing her fellow DXE member go off to jail. She is in turn arrested along with some other people. The other charges are dropped. And now we have opening statements today. Finally, years later, opening statements are about to start at any moment. So there is the background, people. I do want to very quickly go out to Matthew Zerbel, who is at the courthouse. And then we've got an incredibly special guest for you. Matthew, tell us what's going on, because there was a lot that happened. There was a lot that happened at the last court hearing. Oh, what happened? Just give us the basics.
Yeah, sorry, one sec. Moving over here to be a little further from the courthouse, and I've got a bunch of people out here to support Zoe behind me now. Yeah, most recently what happened is we've seen 2 subpoenas of people within DXE, Cassie King and Paul Picklesheimer, have both been subpoenaed. And we're not quite sure exactly why yet. We've got a lot of hype for today, though. We've got 20 or 30 supporters already that I see around, and here all to listen to the prosecution's opening statements today.
Is anybody there who can talk to us who is like Elmira Tanner or anybody like that there? Because we don't even know if Cassie King, who is Direct Action Everywhere's communications lead, can now talk to the media. Sometimes if you're subpoenaed, you can't talk. What is your understanding of that, Matthew?
Yeah, I know for sure that she can't hear anything about what's going on. I do see her here, though, so I'll see if she can say a few words.
Absolutely. Please ask her. Meanwhile, oh, Cassie, can you talk?
Oh, she's not here, but I'm finding her.
Okay. All right. Well, we're going to put you on mute and bring in our very special guest. We're so excited to have with us today Alexandra Paul, and she is a famous actress. You've probably seen her in many, many movies and TV shows, but she's also an incredible activist. You also were prosecuted for rescuing chickens way back in 2021, but you were found not guilty. What is today like, the first day of opening statements for Zoe, do you think?
Very exciting and long awaited. As people may or may not know, this trial was supposed to go on in the spring, but the prosecution insisted that they weren't ready, even though it was over a year since they had indicted Zoe. So they pushed the trial another 6 months. which is always disappointing to activists, because Zoe's the kind of activist who's in court so that she can move the legal system forward for animals. So she is undoubtedly excited, especially because her attorney, Chris Caraway, who represented my co-defendant, Alicia Santurio, during our trial in 2023, is an incredible speaker. He will do a really wonderful job doing opening statements. And the interesting thing about his opening statements is he's not going to be trying to convince the jury that Zoe did not remove those chickens. What he's going to try and do is explain why she did and why it should be legal under the law.
All right. Well, we're going to get back to you again in a second because I want to talk about your case where you were found not guilty. Matthew, did you get anybody? Is there anybody there who can talk?
Yeah, we've got Joe Ullman here. This is your left.
Excellent.
Here to talk about how things
Joe,
have been for him.
Tell us what happened. We're trying to figure out what happened in court. So Paul and Cassie are subpoenaed. Does that mean that Cassie has been basically gagged and the direct action everywhere lead communications person can't talk to the media? Or can she talk, but she just can't go into the courtroom?
It's unclear exactly what she can and can't do.
Take off your earbuds. Hey, Joe, take off your earbuds and just talk.
Hear.
Okay, well, just tell us.
Yeah, so that is pretty much what Kevin on the defense team
You have to put your earbuds back in their pocket.
Like a back.
Oh, for Christ's sake. All right. Guess what, guys? That didn't work.
Get the message out about the.
Oh, perfect. I think your earbuds.
Have cameras in the courtroom.
Start from the beginning.
It does seem that, as Kevin argued as part of the defense team, it does feel that Cassie not being able to view the court proceedings potentially is kind of a backdoor way for the prosecution to prevent direct action everywhere from doing our press about this. And if Cassie can't go in the courtroom, then that's going to be very difficult. As far as like what Cassie can and can't do, I can't exactly speak to. It's not clear to me, but that was an argument that Kevin made.
And what about the records? I also heard there was some bad news about the records.
Sorry,
Bad
Jane. If you could
news
repeat that.
about the records.
Definitely. Yeah, that's upsetting to see that records from inside the facility corroborated by the quality assurance manager who said that basically, like, this is the office that's in the background of those, the photo of those documents. You can see the office, you can see the table. He says all of that looks the same. Raven, who took the photos, testified to actually being in there taking the photos, yet apparently there are arguments that the prosecution is making that those aren't relevant still, or that they would cause too much of a distraction from what they believe is just a focus on the conspiracy and the trespasses that Zoe made. Even though they do show high rates of condemnation, deaths by the chickens of methods other than slaughter, and that impacted Zoe and her view of Petaluma poultry. So it is highly relevant, but at this time, I agree, it's bad news that they can't go in.
Thank you, Joe. Sorry about those technical issues, but you know what? We're doing what used to take millions of dollars and dozens of people, and we're doing it all on our computer. I want to go back to Alexandra Paul. You know, you were put on trial for an open rescue that happened back in 2021, and we have video of you running down the street and doing that open rescue. Here it is. There you are with your colleague, Alicia Santurio, rescuing those two chickens. This involves another company entirely. But there you were. It's called an open rescue because you put yourself right on camera and you were found not guilty. But the difference here is that they've dropped the theft charge against Zoe. So by dropping the theft charge and only charging her with conspiracy, the defense is saying that really limits their ability to describe, well, conditions of the property, which we don't consider it animals, just mere property. But it's a game they played, and they did this with Wayne Shung, and he was convicted. So we're kind of calling this a tale of two trials. They're trying the exact same thing with Zoe. And what do you make of this strategy?
Well, the ag industry is watching very closely all the trials that animal activists are pushing into the courts, and they're learning from them. Our trial was one that the county of Merced expected to win, so they put their least effective prosecutor on for the first couple days, and then they realized what they were up against, and they put their most senior criminal prosecutor on the case, but they still lost. And so they're learning, though, about how to navigate the courts, what to allow in and what to really fight to not allow in. And this is why they, like you said, we were able to discuss at least the conditions of the birds from footage that we'd seen, and we were allowed to have a testimony about the medical records of the birds, which helped the jury come out on our side.
And so I believe, and a lot of observers believe, they learned from your case and decided, wow, she got off. She took the stand. They were able to talk about the condition of the animals to a certain degree. Let's make sure that we can't talk about the condition of the animals. I want to play a little bit of your testimony, which was also a very big factor. And as you watch this, think about the pressure on Zoe now. With no video of what she alleges criminal animal cruelty going on inside the facility, which of course the owners of the facility deny, calling her an extremist. With limits on the documents like no condemnation records. How is she? It really is up to her to paint that picture now.
We also choose these animals because they tell best the story of what's going on behind these closed doors. And we document it and we share it with the world because nobody else is showing people what's going on. The only reason people know what's going on behind these closed doors is because of animal investigators.
So there you go. You were able, first of all, you're an actress. You're an activist.
You didn't have to act, though.
Well, you were very compelling, okay? And I'll tell you something else. Whether you like it or not, you're a celebrity, and it's much harder to convict a celebrity. I know that from covering a lot of criminal charges, trials across the decades. And most legal observers will agree with that. So, given you went through almost the exact same thing, except that she's not being charged with theft, she's being charged with conspiracy. What do you think she has to prove on the witness stand? Like, what you were sitting there in that witness stand defending yourself. What does she got to do?
Well, she's a very sympathetic character because she's so young, and she's been clearly committed to the welfare of chickens since she was 11. And she was nonviolent. You can see in that footage that she's looking at the chickens. She doesn't just take the first chicken. She looks to find a chicken, which shows that she was looking for a sick chicken and not just any chicken, which will help in defending her, at least that she's trying to get a chicken to medical care who needs one. We know all of them need one, but she was definitely took the time. And she's an expert. She took longer than Alicia and I to grab a chicken. So, and we were able to show how easy it is to see a sick chicken right away. You don't have to examine it thoroughly. Within a second or two, you can see that the chicken is sick. So that's going to be very helpful. There will be Carla Cabral, who took care of the chickens afterwards. I think, when I was in the court, was allowed to be a witness, and she will be a witness as an expert on the conditions of the chickens. So even if we might not be able to see the conditions of all the chickens and what was going on at that facility, we will be able to see what's happened to Ivy and
Aster,
Aster, and Poppy. Yes.
Yes, we have those 4 chickens. And I have an actual photo of the chickens who are at the very heart of this. there they are. And I have to tell you that Zoe Rosenberg wrote a letter to those chickens. And she said, if I had to do it all over again, I would, because they are now living their best lives. And these chickens are ambassadors for the 75 billion chickens who are killed every year in industrialized animal agriculture. And, you know, even the judge himself made some kind of reference to animal agriculture being on trial here. I don't know if he said it was on trial, but he used that reference in court during the last court day. And, you know, with 140,000 chickens being killed every minute on planet Earth, one of the things that we have to look at are the larger societal implications of this trial. And so I want to get everybody's response. But first, let's play the comment made just yesterday by Dr. Silas Rao. He is an internet pioneer. He is a climate healer scientist. He is a systems analyst, and he is personally outraged by this prosecution.
In the midst of an ecological collapse, to go and prosecute a 23-year-old for rescuing 4 chickens, to me is completely absurd theater. You know, this is, I mean, we don't know what we are doing, you know, when we put all our energies into things like that. They're trying to make an example out of Zoe Rosenberg, and this is not going to stop the movement at all. So if they continue to persecute Zoe Rosenberg for her compassionate acts, they're going to create more Zoe Rosenbergs in the world. So this is the problem that they're facing now, you know, if they keep continuing to do this. So I'm here for Zoe. I think she's an awesome human being, an extremely courageous human being, and she deserves our undivided support.
Wow, that was heavy. I know you've got to go back into court soon. So Matthew, what's the situation there? Let's just, who's gathered behind you? Who, what, when, where, why, how?
Yeah, everyone that's gathering behind here is a supporter. Right now we're getting briefed on how to talk in the courtroom, how to make sure that we're not potentially biasing the jurors. Of course, since we know a lot about the case, if we were to give our own notions of the case to the jurors, they're not allowed to hear that since it's outside of the actual trial itself. Yeah, I think everyone is very hopeful, excited to see the opening statements. Of course, I think the real interesting thing will be once Zoe is able to give her opening statements. Zoe's testimony will be really important and has been referenced so many times that once her testimony is over, there'll be a lot of discussion for what is allowed to be crossed, what the prosecution is able to grill her over. But how the prosecution lays out their case today is really going to determine all of the defenses that Zoe has to create, all of the way that the rest of the trial will go. So those will be the 2 pivotal moments of the case, and this one is happening in under half an hour now.
It's very nerve-wracking. Matthew, get your notepad out, because with Cassie unable to go into courtroom, guess what? We have to rely on you for the latest details and what the prosecution said and what the defense said. Now, again, in this very strange trial, they're starting at 1:30 every day, which is, I mean, I've covered dozens of criminal trials. I've never heard of this. Okay, usually you start at 9 in the morning and that's it. But they're starting at 1:30 every day. So literally in next 20 minutes, we're going to be getting, and you can also follow on X, which is Purdue Rescue Trial. On X, we will be getting updates from Purdue Rescue Trial, and it will describe what's happening. That's how we found out that these 2 leaders of Direct Action Everywhere, Paul Picklesheimer and Cassie King, had been subpoenaed. And when you're subpoenaed, you're not supposed to be in the courtroom. So the defense is saying, hey, you just cut off Direct Action Everywhere at the knees. She's the head of communications, and now she can't know what's going on inside the court to tell the media what's happening. And so these are, in my opinion, Games. I mean, these are games. I'd like to get we have attorney Shaka Smith here. You have covered numerous trials and numerous cases. Do you think that's fair to say the communications director of an organization has been subpoenaed, therefore she can't go inside the courtroom to find out what's going on?
Yeah, I mean, of course, that seems very unfair. You want the media and the press to be able to cover this, to get the word out. So perhaps it's strategy, perhaps it's a way to make sure there's not more people hearing about this case. But certainly it's very unfortunate. Yeah, it certainly looks like almost a violation of First Amendment rights. We have to see what was the intent behind these subpoenas.
Yeah, it really feels like we've crossed over. You know, there was a lot of sense at the beginning of this case that it was a fair case, that the judge had been fair. And now with these rulings about no condemnation records, you heard Joe Allman say, this woman who is a famed animal cruelty investigator, Raven Deerbrook, who actually is famous and has been in many major newspapers for risking her life to go into a pig slaughter house and go into the gas chamber and videotape what happens to those pigs. And of course, the industry had always said, oh, they just fall asleep. And she has horrific video, the stuff of nightmares, that they scream their bloody heads off while they're deprived of oxygen. And this woman is now ruled, no, you're not an expert. See, the experts are co-opted, okay, by industry. And if you're not an expert, Lindsay Baker, who's co-opted by industry with a bunch of titles, which you can't get if you're looking at animal agriculture from a different perspective than the establishment looks at, then you can't testify. So it's a catch-22, Lindsay.
Absolutely. And I just want to go back to the fact that, you know, they're overcharging Zoe in this case. And I think it's going to backfire on them, because I think people in the jury are going to have sympathy for her. She's a young girl. She's in college. She's obviously has diabetes. So she has an illness, and to put her through that for value of $24 for chickens is insane. And I think it is going to backfire on them. And what we're going to see here is people are going to see the imbalance of legal power over actual justice. And I think it's gonna turn the case. I'm praying.
Okay, thank you. I want to get to all my panelists, but we only have the amazing Alexandra Paul for 7 more minutes. So I want to go back to you. Did you feel that you got a fair trial? You were acquitted, so I assume that you were happy about that, but I never want to assume. That's the first rule of journalism. But did you feel you got a fair trial, and do you feel like this trial is markedly different from the trial you experienced?
In terms of whether I was happy or not when I was acquitted, it was not material to me whether I was acquitted or not. One thing, I just wanted to get the case into court so that animal rights can be at least discussed. The one drawback of our trial was that it really was about the humans, which is Zoe's too. It's about the humans. We've tried to get the necessity of defense in so we can focus on the animals, but generally it ends up being about whether the the defendants are guilty or not. Until we can get the animals' perspective in, the law is not going to move forward like we need to. But so anyway, and I think Zoe is of the same mind as I, that there will be a good optics if she wins, but if she loses, there are benefits too, because really the most important thing is that we keep getting these cases into court to try and change case law, especially around the necessity of defense, which the judges did not let in either my case or Zoe's case. So I know Zoe's of the same mind as I. And by the way, we were all offered deals before, a lot of deals. Alicia and I were offered 5 deals. They got so sweet, but we said no because we wanted to go to trial. Zoe, same thing. She wanted to go to trial as much as I think, and I do believe that Big Ag is going to regret that they took this 23-year-old to trial.
Why?
Because she's garnered so much positive attention around the care, the issue of chickens. people will be like, why did this woman risk so much to save these 4 chickens? What's going on that we don't know about? And that's one of the other advantages of trying to get into court, is that we try and get these documents into court to show what's really going on. Now, in this case, as Joseph said, a lot of the documents aren't going to be allowed in, but the omission of them, the question of them, will still be on the jury's mind. Like, why is Big Ag fighting so much to keep this information out, and on the mind of people who hear about this case?
Well, bottom line is, a picture tells 1,000 words, Ellen Dent. And the fact that I think the only pictures of chickens that are going to be allowed in are the chickens as they were being taken. And there's various other shots like surveillance footage. But a lot of the other footage of chickens in Purdue's industrialized animal agriculture operation that DXC says they videotaped in there, like this, for example, the jury is not going to see these images. And we have other images. And by the way, we invite Purdue on anytime at all. They say they have high animal welfare standards. We've always put out their website, corporate.purduefarms.com/responsibility/animal-care, and their statement saying they have the highest standards of animal care for birds, and that DXC is an extremist group with a radical agenda to end animal agriculture. Essentially, that's what they're saying. And, in response to that, supporters of direct action everywhere say it's not an essential industry. It's a destructive industry. That's what Dr. Silas Rao was saying, from an ecological perspective, from a health perspective, from a perspective of animal suffering. It is an unnecessary industry in general that does not need to be protected, that needs to be phased out. So I guess the one thing both sides can agree on, and this is my last question to you before you hop off, Alexandra, is the one thing that both sides can agree on to try to find commonality is, yes, the defense or Zoe and DXC are agreeing with the other side that they believe animal agriculture, industrialized particularly, should be phased out.
We definitely believe that. It's bad for human health. It's bad for animals. Clearly, I don't think anyone will argue that factory farming is nice to animals. No, all the polls show that even people who haven't been on a factory farm believe that. And then it's bad for the environment. So it's not good for anybody. And the only group that's getting away with any kind of advantage here is Big Ag.
Well, I really want to thank you for joining us. You are a leader in the animal rights movement. I have videotaped you many times. And
yes,
I do hope I do, and your twin sister. Once confusing you for your twin sister at one event where I was talking to you, but actually I was talking to your twin sister. But it's amazing, a family of animal activists. But please come back at some point. We really hope to have you because your insights are amazing. So let's hear it for Alexandra Paul.
Thank you all for being on, and I'll see you maybe later this week.
Yay! Right. Thank you. Thank you so much, Alexandra.
All right.
Bye-bye. Thank you. So let's get some round robin on what we've all heard. We've heard by the way, in 1 minute, opening statements are going to start. So we will be seeing on X, and I could ask you, former animal cruelty, former law enforcement investigator turned DXD member, Tiffany Brunelli, you can bring us some of the updates as they come in on the Purdue Rescue Trial X feed. Ellen Dent, what was your reaction, everything you've heard so far?
They're pulling every, different strategy that they can to try to set up, Zoe Rosenberg for a conviction. But, we're aware of these tactics now. As you said, they use these same tactics in Wayne Chung's trial. So hopefully she'll be able to testify and the jury will get to know her as a person and the reason for why she did go and get Ivy, Poppy, Aster, and Azalea off of that truck, and they'll be able to see those chickens, see how their feathers are missing, see the condition they were in as they came off the truck, see that they were really in distress and needing, to be, some sort of veterinary attention and care, and that's exactly.
There you are. You're back. You're back. Finish off what you were going to say.
Oh, I was just saying that's exactly what they received. Sorry if I popped off. They received, veterinary attention, and that's what they needed. And you could tell that from the video. So I'm really glad to hear that the jury will be able to see the video of these chickens, Poppy, Ivy, Aster, and Azalea being pulled from the truck so that they can hopefully notice for themselves the condition that they were in, and that Zoe did very carefully look at them and assess their condition before, taking them.
All right. Well, Shaka, it is time right now inside that court. Opening statements are starting. The pressure is intense. I'll be honest with you, folks. I woke up this morning and I was a little nervous. I woke up and I said, oh, it's a big day. Unchained TV has vowed to cover this every single day. But the two biggest days in a trial are opening statements and closing statements, and then the third, of course, the verdict, and then the fourth, the sentencing. So this is a huge day. I urge everybody watching on social media, share out, because you just heard how they're trying to shut down the organization that the defendant is a part of, Direct Action Everywhere, from being effectively able to report what's happening by subpoenaing their communications director, therefore essentially gagging her because she can't go into court to find out what's going on. And that was brought up in court. The defense said, is this a backdoor way of gagging the main person? And we're talking about Cassie King, who, along with Paul Picklesheimer, another leader of Direct Action Everywhere, was subpoenaed in the last court. So give us your thoughts on how this is all playing out, Shaka.
I think you're going to see these opening statements really set up the case that both sides are going to prove. Of course, it's a big day. Having the win of getting those condemnation records out is not great, but knowing that they will see the video of Zoe and the way she reacted when she got those birds, I think is going to be a win. And Zoe testifying is really going to be a win here. So I'm optimistic about the case that the prosecution can, about the defense, the case the defense can set forth, and we'll just see what happens after today.
Well, let me say this, because we were actually hearing reports that everything was going on very fairly, compliments to the judge. But when I heard that this should be a search for truth, okay, and you just heard Joel Allman say that Raven Deerbrook, who is a famous animal cruelty investigator, went into this facility and she took photos of condemnation records that certainly influenced Zoe Rosenberg's mental state regarding going in there. And those condemnation records presumably show how many chickens arrived dead, how many chickens are too sick to be put into the food system. I would think it would be the most critical thing. You heard that the photographs show the context of it's in the office. The person from this slaughterhouse confirmed, yes, that's our office. In other words, those are the condemnation records. And yet they didn't allow them in, and they're not allowing her to be an expert witness because maybe she doesn't have all these degrees, even though she's famous for risking her life going into a pig gas chamber to videotape it for the first time in history and expose that no, pigs don't just gently fall asleep. They scream their heads off and writhe in pain and terror as the oxygen is deprived. She's going down in history for her investigations, but because she's not part of the system, she can't be an expert. And, we will try to have another veterinarian who has exposed certain things that are happening, for example, with ventilation shutdown. And instead of thanking her, what did the establishment do? They tried to take away her veterinary license. So I hate to say it, but it seems like the entire establishment, law enforcement, judicial, veterinary, animal ag, has been co-opted by this industry. How can she get a fair trial? Lindsay Baker. Go ahead. Hold on. You're the lawyer, Shaka. So weigh in.
Go ahead. Yeah.
Well, I was going to say that the condemnation records, the judge may have thought there's another way to prove her state of mind going into that. And so, often if we think the prejudicial value of those records outweigh the probative value, the judge will keep them out. But my assumption is the judge saw there were other ways she could prove that she believed that these birds were in imminent or serious harm, so that, she did have a real mistake of fact about whether or not this going to rescue the birds would be legal or not legal.
Very good point. And yes, we're getting people responding, the entire establishment. Yes, I think there's a general consensus amongst those who are, let's just say, vegans, which is everybody here on this panel, are seeing this from a completely different set of glasses than people who eat animals and think that's absolutely normal. The prosecutor asked potential jurors if they were vegan, if they knew any vegans, and people who responded in the affirmative, this is my understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, were dismissed. So in a sense, it's trying to demonize veganism. Meanwhile, if every single person on this panel were animal eaters, nobody would blink twice. But that's a societal prejudice. It's a societal prejudice. I often say I'm gay, I'm Puerto Rican, and I'm vegan. I've experienced far more prejudice about being vegan than any other aspect of my life. And it's this attitude, and you see it in the media. If a vegan commits a crime, all they talk about is the fact they mention that they're vegan. Where 99.99999% of people who commit crimes are meat eaters, and they never mention that they're meat eaters. Raise your hand, Tiffany, if something's coming in from court.
Oh, yes, I'll keep an eye.
Yes, please.
But I will say we shouldn't be completely disheartened because there's certain legal rules that both sides have. When it comes to jury selection, you get peremptory challenges where you can dismiss people based on any question you ask for no cause at all. And then after the peremptory challenges are finished, then you have to have a cause to dismiss a juror. So I would say that sometimes we hear these things, but that's part of the rules of jury selection. And so it's not necessarily an indication that the system is coming down on us. It might just be just the rules that they were able to, they were afforded, that they were able to dismiss some jurors based on whether or not they were vegan. But I think they only have 6 of those. So after that, they had to, find other reasons for cause.
Well, I want to dive into that a little bit because my understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, is that you can't be prejudiced in your peremptory challenges. Let's use an example of race, for example. And if there's a defendant of a certain race, and then the prosecution decides to dismiss every single person of that race on the jury that comes up, isn't that at least grounds for an appeal? But also it could be something that is legally dicey. I just want to go back to you on that.
Yeah, it's just difficult to prove because the peremptory challenges you can dismiss for any reason. So you'd have to then prove that you have some intent and some knowledge doing this against a protected class.
Got it. And that's the other thing is that how much of a protected class are vegans? Now, one of our writers at Unchained TV, Jordi Casabajana, actually went down in history because he made veganism a protected class in the United Kingdom, similar to a religion, by filing suit against an employer on the grounds that it was discriminating against him as a vegan, and he won. And that's one of our writers, and he wrote a book about it. So in the United Kingdom, veganism is a protected class, akin to a religion. I don't think that applies here in the United States. And by the way, the first time you get a notice from Purdue Rescue Trial on X, jump in, Tiffany. All right, what are your thoughts on that, Ellen Dent?
About them questioning the jury, about if they're vegan and excluding them. Well, I just don't think that you can really call that a jury of your peers. I'm not exactly sure. Maybe Shaka has a better definition of that, but for me, that would be the same people that you would see just out generally in Petaluma area. So by taking out these people that might have voted yes on Measure J, you're taking away the peer group that she is reliant on to make a fair decision. So that's my opinion on it, is that they are again using another tactic to make it difficult and for Zoe to win this case, and making it easier for the prosecution to attempt to prosecute her.
And Lindsay, what do you make of Dr. Silas Rao's contention that the more they prosecute people, whether it be Zoe Rosenberg, whether it be Wayne Shung, the more they prosecute animal activists, the more activists they will create? What do you think?
I totally agree with that. And I think it is going to backfire on them. And if Zoe is convicted, as Alexandra said, it's going to actually benefit the movement in that it will bring a lot more attention to it. And it will also encourage others to take the same action. Because if she could do it under the circumstances of not even being well, then that certainly is going to inspire other people. I wanted to ask a question of Shaka, but now I can't remember what it was, so probably just let that pass. But if I come back to it, I'll raise my hand. It was in regard to, if the jury is not allowed to see the footage, and no vegans are allowed to be, in the jury, then how is that fair? I mean, it seems like there's something for the defense to argue against here in terms of what's being eliminated, and will they be doing that? I guess that's pretty much what my question was. Is there going to be pushback from the defense on some of the things that are transpiring now, such as Omara not being able to testify, et cetera?
Perhaps in some of the evidentiary issues, but certainly not on the jury. Not on the jury issue so far as what I've heard so far. Because again, you can remove, you have 6 for this particular case that you can just get rid of for any reason. That's not involving a protected class, in which case you could do a Batson challenge, but it doesn't look like we have that here. But I'm certain they're preserving whatever they can for appeal and noting their objections. So when you see the attorney object to certain things, that noting that objection is because they want to make sure they've objected there, so on appeal they can raise the issue again.
Well, I want to play what Zoe Rosenberg had to say about all this. And she said that at the end of court, the last court session when these decisions were made. So let's hear what she had to say, and then we'll discuss it on the other side. And that is her actually going in to rescue these chickens. So we're going to find that soundbite and bring it to you. I don't know where it is, but I've got something even more exciting for you. And that is, you might be wondering, what was it like to be there on that day that all of this went down? Well, guess what? Unchained TV and myself included, we were there on that day, but we were not where Zoe was. We were outside that very same slaughterhouse, I believe in a later hour. And it was part of what they call a Direct Action Everywhere Convergence or Animal Liberation Conference that was the culmination of several days of events and protests and marches. And we didn't even know where we were going, but we ended up going to Petaluma, and we ended up outside the slaughterhouse in question. And there was a protest going on, a demonstration. Here's a look at it very briefly. And then we'll talk about it on the other side, because what's notable about it is that one of the people who was subpoenaed today, Paul Picklesheimer, you will see him in this video. Let's play it. Oh, okay. Well, guess what? What we're going to do is We're going to play. I just found what Zoe Rosenberg had to say. So we're going to remove that from the screen and we're going to play what Zoe Rosenberg had to say.
Bad news is that the judge is not allowing Raven Deerbrook to testify as an expert in investigating animal agriculture operations. He is also not allowing the admission of documents from the slaughterhouse. Another big thing that happened today is that the prosecutors are trying to force my friends to testify against me. They served Cassie King and Paul Darwin Picklesheimer with subpoenas because they want to be able to call them as rebuttal witnesses, perhaps to contradict whatever I testify to. We don't know exactly what they want them to say, and when we asked them, they didn't really give a clear answer. So I don't know what's going to happen. We're resuming court on Monday. We'll have opening statements in front of the jury. So things are getting really real.
So the opening statements are happening right now, and we're about to get some kind of response from those in the court, but no notifications. Is that your understanding, Tiffany? So far, no notifications.
Nothing yet. I believe the prosecution gets to go first with their opening statement, but so far nothing.
Well, let me tell you, this trial has been so slow, okay? Can you believe it is the 4th week of this trial? We have been covering it for 3 prior weeks, and this is the 4th week, and this is just the start of opening statements? That's, honestly, it's very unusual. This whole thing is very unusual. And I got to wonder what the jurors are thinking. Because honestly, if I was a juror and the judge told me, which he told all potential jurors, this trial could go on through the end of October for 4 weeks over 4 chickens worth, if they were healthy. And by the way, these are pictures of them after they were rehabilitated. They are living their lives. We don't get into where they're living their lives. I honestly don't know where they're living their lives, but they've survived. And those are the 4 chickens. And the 4 chickens that Zoe wrote a letter to saying she would do it all over again so that they can experience grass for the first time and actually live a truly normal chicken life as ambassadors of all chickens. But I mean, I can't even imagine what these jurors are thinking. Go ahead, Lindsay Baker.
I was just wondering if that could be part of the strategy to wear the jurors down to where they just want to get the case over with. Because normally what happens is because we know the majority of people are meat eaters. So if the majority of people are probably not going to have the empathetic, eyes to look at this, possibly they're just want to get out of there as quick as they can. So if there's a couple people holding out, the others can put pressure on them. Look, we got to get back to our lives. We got to get back to our jobs. How much you get paid as a juror? Almost nothing. So maybe it's that way of stalling and dragging this out to not only wear down, the jurors, to make them decide to just get this case over with as quickly as possible. Does anybody have thoughts on that?
Yeah, I do. And I love this comment by Paula Franklin in New York City. Both New York One and MSNBC, of all the things they could say about Jane Goodall, they chose to mention that Goodall said that chimps are not vegetarian. And that's true. There's only one article that mentioned that Jane Goodall was a vegan. All the other articles completely ignored that. This is what I'm saying, is that we are having this trial in a carnist world that is increasingly trying to demonize veganism. And that makes it a real David and Goliath battle. And I got to say that the courage that Zoe Rosenberg is showing to go into this, it reminds me of the soldiers in World War I in trench warfare who knew when they jumped out of that trench, there was a very good chance they were going to be instantly gunned down, and they did it anyway. And I love watching that historical footage and thinking about the courage of those soldiers, just knowing, because they're going to follow orders, they're going to go over that trench, and there's going to be machine guns just mowing them down. Is that, I'm not saying we are. I'm an optimist. I'm not saying that this is a fait accompli. But after some of the decisions that were made on Friday, I'm getting increasingly worried. I do have the video now of the very night that Zoe Rosenberg was inside doing her rescue, what was happening outside. Unchained TV was there covering it, and it's very interesting. So check it out, and we'll talk about it on the other side. This is Unchained TV. When we last left off, we were driving from Berkeley, California, almost 40 miles northwest to Petaluma, wondering what would happen next on this animal rights mission under cover of darkness. Upon arriving, we were soon following groups of Direct Action Everywhere activists walking towards a chicken slaughterhouse. As we neared the location, we were greeted by a line of activists holding signs that read, "Right to Rescue." Moments later, we got a real taste of what that means.
We're here, as Sasha said, with a couple hundred activists out here to support our friends and support the chickens who are suffering unimaginable cruelty inside this slaughterhouse here behind us. We're in Sonoma County. Over 200,000 chickens are slaughtered each week.
We have a rescue chicken right here. We have a life just saved from the slaughterhouse. Thank you so much for saving her. Can you tell us anything? Did you go inside? What can you tell us?
I'm speechless right now.
Speak up.
I don't have much to say right now. I'm just speechless.
We went inside and we helped to liberate this little baby here from a truck that was going to be slaughtered very soon. There are more that are on their way out.
Wow. Well, please help us take action. Contact the Sonoma County District Attorney and ask that they prosecute the corporations and not the activists. And please share this live stream. Share this live stream. We need to get this out everywhere. We need to scream it across the world. We have more birds that have just been rescued.
Here's one.
We rescued the birds. They were going to die, and we know that they didn't want to die, so we took them out of the terrible situation.
Yeah, let's get them out of here.
We got to get out of
You can see this one has blood, vomit, very sick, will barely move in my arms.
We've seen about 12 lives probably be saved. 4 before we came here, another 8 while we sat here and watched them come out. And this place doesn't like it when people are here. When people are here, it diverts the trucks to different locations. And thankfully, our friends are vigilant and they watch where the trucks go. And some of our friends just saved 5 more chickens from a truck.
Who could imagine 17 precious chickens have been rescued? I mean, I am just beyond words. And if one more is rescued tonight, that'll be even much better. And we'll see. DXC is so strong. It's unbelievable how they pulled this off.
There's nothing normal or natural about this. So this is damaging human health. This is damaging the environment. And these facilities, it's time to shut them down and stop prosecuting activists who are doing the right thing by taking sick and dying animals out of places like this and instead prosecute the companies themselves.
Of course, as police arrived, the question was, would they see the removal of chickens as rescue or theft of property? Activists argue animals are not mere property, like cans or cars, and maintain they have the legal right to rescue a suffering chicken, just as others have been hailed heroes for rescuing dogs trapped in hot cars. While there was some discussion between the cops and DXC lead organizer Paul Pickleson, no arrests were made. Well, no arrests were made at that moment, but ultimately arrests were made. And that was the very night that Zoe Rosenberg was inside that same facility rescuing those 4 chickens. You may have heard Paul refer to 4 chickens rescued earlier. I believe that is possibly the 4 chickens that Zoe rescued. So, Tiffany Brunelli, as a former law enforcement investigator, now a member of Direct Action Everywhere, what are your thoughts about the bigger societal picture there? That was the reaction of people who are vegan, who are animal activists, and what's happening in court. What the prosecutors are doing is the exact opposite interpretation of essentially the same events.
Yes, it's just hard to even understand that the police arrived and they can see the condition that the chickens are in. These are the same. They're no different than vulnerable children or the elderly. And instead of doing the right thing and going after the corporations or the criminal animal abusers, they go after the whistleblowers, the activists that are trying to show what's going on in these facilities. No one will do anything. And so it's completely upside down from what I'm used to, where if a child's being abused or an elderly person or mentally ill, there's an investigation and the perpetrator is taken in, or at least looked at. This is so upside down. And I'm so sad that the jury will not get to see this type of video that shows the actual condition of these birds after they were rescued or before. Just only that little clip of Zoe rescuing, pulling them out of the crate. It's really sad.
By the way, we want to say again, we invite the company in question on any time. They have denied all allegations of animal cruelty, and they have an open invitation to appear on Unchained TV. We would love to dialogue with them. So here we are. We're almost 1 hour in. So we want to know, has there been any, Tiffany?
Nothing yet. I'm just staring at it, waiting. I'm thinking any minute there should be an update.
We don't know. We honestly do not know whether the opening statements have begun. By the way, let me say this. Not only are we committed to live coverage of this entire trial, and Unchained TV is the only news organization that is doing this kind of coverage, but we also applied to be the pool camera. So we applied to go in there and set up our cameras and cover this entire thing the way, frankly, I used to cover it on Court TV. And the judge said no cameras in the courtroom, no still cameras, no video. Sometimes they will allow still cameras. At least you get the photo of the person appearing. And, in Wayne Shung's trial, they severely limited even a courtroom sketch artist who was there sketching. And they said, essentially, the only sketch you could do is of the defendant, which absolutely is unheard of. So those are the kinds of little tells that tell me, and I'm not sure that there is a prohibition in this case on a courtroom sketch artist. Maybe we should get a courtroom sketch artist in there ASAP. But those little tells of, limiting what the jurors can see, limiting what the public can see. Some would call it a conspiracy of silence. My personal suggestion is cameras in all factory farms, cameras in all slaughterhouses. That would solve it. We don't have to be arguing in court of what video goes in, what video goes out. The entire nation and the world could see what's happening inside industrialized animal agriculture every day. Your thoughts on that, Ellen Dent?
Yeah, I agree. They should have glass walls and, everything that should be transparent to the public about, who they're eating and how they were treated prior to their untimely death. And I think that if a lot more people saw the footage, like Direct Action Everywhere was able to obtain, that they would realize exactly why Zoe, felt the need to do what she did and why she would do it all over again, even knowing that she would face prosecution for trying to, show mercy and save the life of someone else. So, that's how I feel about it. I feel like there should be, cameras, glass walls, windows, however, the public needs to see. And then there should also be cameras inside the courtroom because this is a public proceeding. It will go on public record. There should be a video record of it as well.
I agree with you 100%. Cameras in the courtroom. I would love to be seeing what's happening now, given that the Purdue rescue trial has been pretty thorough in reporting what's happening. And so it kind of, I'm wondering if the reason why we're not getting the reports of what's happening is that Cassie King has not been allowed in the courtroom. Because now that she has been subpoenaed, I guess they were saying she can't go into court. So maybe that's one reason why. But, I go back to what Dr. Silas Rao said. The more people try to silence, it's like trying to push down a volcano. When it erupts, it just erupts with more force. So let's do some final thoughts, starting with Shaka. As the attorney who has joined us, and we so appreciate having you. Where are we? And if you could unmute yourself.
Well, I think we're at a point where we see what's been left out, what the jury's not going to get to see. So we're going to really focus on Zoe and getting her personal story out, and really just trying to maybe mitigate perhaps what's at the sentencing phase, and making sure their objections are preserved for appeals.
One of the other things I wanted to say is that Wayne Shung always said that sometimes losing a case is better for the movement than gaining a case. Because if you win a case and you're acquitted, well, that's it. But if you lose a case and you appeal and the decision is overturned, and let's say the courts say, which, Wayne Shung is appealing his conviction, and he was charged with very similar charges to what Zoe's charged with, conspiracy and trespass. If you win, and then the higher court rules, no, they made a bad decision. For example, there is an inherent right to rescue in going in to save a life. If you think there's a greater harm going on, you can do something that's minor, like trespassing. The obvious example, you're walking down the street, you see across in a neighbor's yard, there's a child drowning in their pool. You're going to trespass to save that child's life. Therefore, you have the necessity defense. And that's what the judge said is not allowed here. That's what the judge said is not allowed in Wayne's case. So if, let's say, for example, Wayne's appeal is successful, it's very possible that it could establish the right to rescue via the necessity defense. And let me just get your response on that, Shaka, because that's a huge, huge point.
Yeah, absolutely. So if the next court establishes that there was clear error in excluding the necessity defense from this trial, that's going to be a huge win for animal rights activists everywhere. So hopefully, what it looks like they've done is they've entered in all the different records that they are on file, all the condemnation records, so that the next court can review that and decide whether or not that necessity defense should have come in after all.
All right, thank you. Well, let's do some final thoughts. Ellen Dent, weigh in.
Yeah, I agree. Anybody who sees, what these chickens are going through is going to see why there was a necessity to go in there and save their lives. I think the only thing that we can hope for is that, the jury will realize that we do have a moral responsibility to disobey unjust laws. Like, this is not justice, for these animals that are, being trapped inside of animal agriculture. And, Dr. Rao is completely right. This will only serve to, create more strength in our community, to get more activists to rise up, to make more activists that will do the same in order to get animal agriculture on trial. They think they have Zoe Rosenberg on trial, but they very much so will be seen for their actions that led to her having to defend herself. against this huge, monstrous industry. So I'm just really rooting for her in every way. I know that the best case scenario might be to get to case law, but she's just so sick. And I hope that they explain how sick that she is, and how much of a huge heart she has, for these other animals, and that these jurors will make that connection and make the right decision.
And by the way, lest anybody try to say she's sick because she's a vegan, she has since childhood type 1 diabetes, and it's not related to, for example, type 2 diabetes is related to diet. Type 1 is not. So she just happens to be somebody who has an illness from childhood, and you'll see that she has something in her nose because she's very ill. And I just can't even imagine what she's going through, because she said she was told that if convicted, some of the medical devices she needs to survive might not be allowed to be inside her cell. So I'm honestly speechless at her courage. And let's go to Lindsay Baker, your final thoughts for today.
Well, my final thought is, whether it's Alexandra's case or Wayne's case or Zoe's case, what is being exposed to the general public, which I think they still don't have a clear picture of, but it's getting much more clear, that these animals on factory farms are not living any kind of a life, any kind of life at all, other than torture and suffering until they're killed. Most people think they live this bucolic life. I think that's being shattered, and that's a good thing. So, I'm just keeping very positive. I think the truth will prevail. And as you said, if she does get convicted, it will only open the door to more exposure to this.
All right. And we've got the one and only Tiffany Brunelli, former law enforcement investigator turned Direct Action Everywhere member. Your final thoughts.
Jane, still nothing. What's going on in there? But I just want to say that DXE has a term called losing forward. And so they say even whatever they lose, they're always moving forward by getting this information out. It's crazy that this is the only way we can get this information out. But I know also they already have big plans, no matter which way, God forbid it doesn't go well, but they have big plans either way of how they're going to handle if she wins or lose. So they have a very good attitude called losing forward.
Very good. Thank you. Now, I just want to say it's my turn for closing statements, even though we're waiting for opening statements in this trial. Guys and gals watching, this is history. Think about some events in the past. We can all think of ones that we want, whether it's civil rights, whether it's women's rights, whether it's LGBTQ rights, whatever civil justice issue that you could think back on. And there are big moments. But at that moment, you don't always know that it's that big. I believe that this is history in the making. And that's why Unchained TV is committed to covering this trial. And we're the only news organization covering this trial every single day. So we will be back tomorrow at 1 p.m. Pacific. And what we ask of our audience is to be part of this. We can't do it alone. While we've managed to replicate the format that I used to use when I was anchoring on Court TV, that I used to use when I was anchoring trials on CNN Headline News years ago, we don't have the distribution of a CNN or a Court TV. We need people to share this video out. The animals cannot speak for themselves. So you're a part of this. Those who are watching, you're a big part of it. Hit that share button, share, and come back tomorrow at 1 p.m. Pacific, which is 2, 3, 4 p.m. Eastern, and be a part of this. It's going to be exciting. We'll be able to tell you exactly what happened in opening statements today. And it is a David and Goliath battle. That's no exaggeration. It is literally a tug of war between how we are going to perceive the vast majority of living beings on this planet, which is not humans. There are 8.2 billion humans, and we are killing more than 80 billion land animals every year. It's about those land animals. And in the process of killing those land animals, what are we doing? We're accelerating climate change. We're causing negative health outcomes for people who are getting high cholesterol. There is no cholesterol in any vegan product, who are traumatized by the animal suffering that they know is going on. So this is a battle for the culture of human society. Be a part of it. Come back tomorrow. And I want to thank all of you, our expert panel, for taking time out of your day. You're busy people, and I really appreciate you.